For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh. Today we are going to go ahead and support independent cinema by talking about the film The Only Ones. The Only Ones is an independent slasher film that tells the story of a group of friends taking a long weekend away in the country that gets disturbed by a series of unfortunate events. First thing I want to praise right out the gate is how this film diverts expectations. Without getting into the spoilers of what I mean by that, so I'm going to keep this kind of cryptic, is that I felt like every time I felt like I knew or had an inkling of where the story was going, it took this right turn, and it just kept taking those turns to kind of always keep me on the edge and always keep me guessing. This film does a great job at diverting expectations. So if you think that you're coming in to get something that is very much in the vein of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Friday the 13th, you will be sadly mistaken and pleasantly surprised. I think the thing that got me the most is just how beautiful this film looks. As a cinephile, one of the things that I always love when reviewing films is talking about the nerdier things, including like cinematography, the score, pacing, things along that line. The cinematography of this film is simply stunning, is beautiful. It has this way of feeling almost atmospheric. The fact that this takes place in the summer, it kind of has this real warmth to it. And with the color palette choices as well as the wardrobe in this really makes it feel like it's an extension of the Friday the 13th universe. And also, the cinematography has this way of feeling almost like a picture out of time, to where it feels like early 70s horror. And when you mix that with some of the gags and the practical effects that you find throughout the course of these 77 minutes, you're just in for a great time. This is a movie that you want to keep coming back to. It just has a really fun atmosphere about it. I think the thing that surprises me most about this film is just its characters and its character dynamics and arcs throughout the course of the film. One of my common complaints as a cinephile that loves to watch these cheesy slasher films from the 80s is that you meet a group of people that you never A, get to connect to, you never get to see grow, and B, also at the same time that they are just set up to be nothing more than on-screen deaths for Jason or Chucky or Pinhead or Leatherface or Freddy Krueger or Michael Myers. That list just goes on and on and on. But that was the surprising thing about The Only Ones. It was probably the biggest surprise for me. And I have to be honest, it is going to be a little bit of a slow burn. This film has a really strong start, but you get to know these characters. You have to stick with it, because if you don't stick with it, then the ending just doesn't have the same punch. This was one of those films that kept me guessing continually, because I didn't know how it was going to end up, and I didn't really know or couldn't really see how all of these moving parts were going to be streamlined together in a film that is under 80 minutes. I talked about the cinematography earlier, but this is actually the directorial debut of cinematographer Jordan Miller, who's also the film's writer. And I gotta say, this is one hell of a debut. Like, this film packs a punch in such a short period of time that it is impressive, to say the least. Overall, the cast is mostly outstanding, and I say that because some of the acting, there are moments in here where it just kind of feels like a line falls flat here, and that could be something that was written in the script, that could have been how it was delivered, or a mixture of both. It doesn't happen often, but when it does hit, it feels just kind of like adding a little bit of salt into the wound, where it is very noticeable. Another surprising element of this film is how it uses comedy. Comedy just kind of happens unexpectedly, and it's the best feeling when it does hit. Overall, this is a really entertaining film, and I'm ready to run this one through the Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give The Only Ones a 4 out of 5. I think overall this is a very, very strong slasher with great character development, a cast of really interesting and well-written characters with some fun gags and some stunning cinematography. Currently right now, The Only Ones is just going by word of mouth. It is expected to hit the festival circuit beginning this fall. So if you guys have a chance to see it, check it out and let us know what you guys thought. Well, let's talk about mental health, shall we? If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we will take a theme of mental health out of the film which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. But halfway through the film, one of the characters in this film shares their tragic backstory, and it's a good point of conversation to remember that the tragedy that happens or the trauma that befalls us today has an impact on who we are tomorrow. And even further than that, there are healthy and non-healthy ways on how to respond and actually work through said trauma and tragedy. Because whether we know it or we like it or not, that impact and how we respond not only has an effect on how we see ourselves, but also at the same time of how we interact and how we view our relationship with others. This film explores the path chosen of kind of ignoring or not really finding a healthy way to work on that trauma and ultimately how it ends up affecting relationships that you have later on down the line. And on the flip side, it's also worth noting and mentioning too that sometimes the relationships that we have in our lives, whether that is a partner or a friend, can actually spot and call out some of the trauma that we've just lived with and called normal for the remainder of our lives or since the event happened. Sometimes it takes that relationship or relationships or two to really have that third party kind of look at the trauma or how we respond to things and really kind of say, hey, you know, I think you should benefit from therapy or X, Y, or Z resources because I'm noticing these unhealthy habits that you have or unhealthy ways of how you respond or interact with X, Y, or Z. So don't discount the relationships around you, but also consider that the things that you endure today create who you're going to be tomorrow. Remember, the things that we endure and go through have a effect on our mental health. And ultimately, at the same time, how we respond to those impacts will affect the mental health journey that we have moving forward. If you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, click the links in the show notes below. That is going to do it for us on this episode, but in the show notes below, you guys will also find links to our mental health resource library. That subscribe button so that you guys never miss a movie conversation here on YouTube, but also links to our podcast network and all of our socials and ways to support us financially with our mental health education efforts. In the show notes below, you guys will also find links to our very own film festival, Horrific Hope Film Festival, that is held every year right here in Virginia. It is the first festival of its kind to be horror-centric and mental health focused. So if you are a filmmaker or you know someone that is, whether it's a short, feature, or they even have scripts, hit the link below and get involved with Horrific Hope. We would love to see your nightmares. And with that said, until next time, remember to keep it spooky and keep it classy. Have a great night.